What's up, guys? We are back with part two with Willy's interview with the International Legionnaire, same International Legion that I was in. This Legionnaire, who is remaining anonymous, would join. Sounds like a couple of weeks after the initial Russian invasion into Ukraine in February of 2022. I was in the Legion beginning of 2023. Excuse me. Real quick, my name is Saxon. I went by Vegas in the International Legion. I joined in January 2023. I'm no longer in the Legion, but I am still in Ukraine. Before I was in the Legion, I was a firefighter and an EMT outside of Fort Worth, Texas. I had zero military experience prior to being in the Legion, going through training and deploying to the front line. If you haven't seen part two of this interview, or part one of this interview, I highly recommend it because you're going to be lost. There's a lot of context that you need to pick up on, but basically this Legionnaire is explaining how he has a lot of military experience. I believe he's Irish, Scottish, somewhere in the UK, possibly. He has a ton of military experience and in the private sector, security ops, and he feels like he was basically betrayed by the Ukrainian government, the Ukrainian armed forces, because of some of the corruption. He had his weapons stolen. He wasn't paid. He was sent on suicide missions. He lost his friends. We've heard this type of a story before. It's something that I also have mentioned in multiple videos in the past because I don't want there to be any confusion regarding the International Legion if you are considering to go, which a lot of you are. I get a ton of emails saying, hey, I'm leaving in 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month. So all this stuff is just important to keep in your mind. If it's something that is a deal breaker for you, hey, I'm glad you saw it. You know, if it's not, like for a lot of people, they're like, yeah, that's shitty, but I want to get out there and fight. All right, well, at least you know this now.
Lives to help them out. People pouring from their own businesses and their own pockets, really bad. We came with our hearts, living good jobs, good lives, and everything. Really good lives to help them out. People pouring from their own businesses and their own pockets insane amount of money, and we're risking our lives and everything, and they still do things like this. It's like, really frustrating.
I bet. I bet. I bet that would be very, very difficult, especially if you're knowing people dying, as a direct result of this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And how much experience have you had with, like, against the Russians? Are they having, are they, because
Before he goes into this topic, there was I know of a couple people who were injured or are no longer here. They were killed in certain operations on the front line because the intel was bad. They or the legionnaires or soldiers or whatever unit it may have been told their command, hey, this is a bad idea, and command said go. And if they don't go, they're blacklisted from the Ukrainian armed forces, meaning they can never come back and rejoin Azov or Kraken or the Legion or something different. So if they don't go, they're threatened to be blacklisted, which I know a handful of guys who are blacklisted for this reason. And I know guys who were like, oh, I don't want to get blacklisted. So they went on the mission, they died. This is again, it's a reality of, I would say, this conflict and the Ukrainian armed forces. And again, I want to be clear because I currently live in Ukraine. I'm going to live in Ukraine for a long time. This is not disparaging. I don't want this to seem like we're shitting on the Ukrainian armed forces, right? I think I've made it very clear in my past videos. I have nothing but love for this country and the heroes that are dying out there on the front. A lot of these troops, these Ukrainian soldiers who are dying on the front, have no idea about this stuff, right? They don't have their hands in it. It's a handful of bad apples, really bad apples, usually in command positions, who are taking money that's supposed to go to these frontline troops. They're taking equipment. These are the bad apples. It's not the Ukrainian armed forces as a whole.
because I guess a lot of the media is saying that they're being completely defeated. Is that your sort of experience with them, or are they supplied well and are they moving forwards into Ukraine?
At the moment, looks like, yeah, they have so much more. I know I know more than a couple teams who is very active, and usually they get, they get more fire than they can deliver. Like my one of my friends' team just recently tried to make an assault and realized that there was so many armored vehicles that they were far to be able to engage, and they're like top-notch guys, like the most equipped, let's say, forces in the country, and they were like, no, we wasn't able. It was too many armored vehicles, was too many, and we need to fall back and replan and so on. And one thing I think they are slowly losing, but at the same time, the Russians getting tired because it's cost loads of money and stuff and supplies. The intensity of fighting, at least from my personal experience, slow down.
Yes.
Makes sense as well, because there is not as much moving. There is no 10, 20, 30 case per day of taking the ground from one other side. Now it's more trench warfare. It looks like it's slowed down, but in regards of how much artillery goes, I think our guys were saying we actually can feel the difference finally, that it's not only enemy artillery shooting at us, but we're shooting at them as well. Then hard to say, really hard to say, to be honest.
Yeah.
This was early on in the conflict. Again, he joined when the war had just started, this Legionnaire. I would say it's much different now. I would say it was very much this back and forth kind of war of attrition, and has been for a long time, but the reality is Russia has more of everything. Supplies, manpower, weapons, and they're winning that war of attrition, in my opinion.
Like from
because it's like where I... Yeah.
You go, sorry.
No, go for it.
I was going to ask, like, from your experience on the front, do you think Ukraine can overcome this war and then can push the Russians back to the original border?
With the support of the world, that's a must. US and so on, with the support of the war, and maybe a couple higher up people, more than a couple higher up people, pulling the fingers out of their asses and actually start slamming and cutting the heads of the people who steals massive amount of the equipment and so on. Yeah, definitely, because I think Ukrainians now have over 1 million soldiers ready to fight. The people there, Ukrainians, I was amazed. I was up so many men just ready to go to fight. It's like ridiculous, phenomenal number of men. As soon as the war started, men and women were just rejected at the recruitment offices because there's so many ready to go and fight. So many. It's like I've never been in a country where there's so many people ready to fight. And yeah, I think they can, with the support and changing mentality and making some improvement in regards to literally the corruption of stealing left and right, vehicles constantly disappearing as well, and so on. It's like, yeah, they definitely would win. Definitely they will win.
Interesting perspective, especially from early on. I definitely agree with him as far as find these people who have their fingers in this corruption, their hands in this corruption, which I know a lot have been caught and they are in jail. I witnessed this firsthand, but I also witnessed people commit this corruption, and I guess the people that I did witness are currently in jail. But I don't know. He said he made the comment, cut the heads off of these people who are committing this corruption, right? Which I'm sure he meant as a figure of speech, but I think it really would it would benefit the entire International Legion and the Ukrainian Armed Forces if something much more serious like that was done to these criminals, basically what I would consider to be war criminals, people who are stealing all of this money and supplies from the people who really need it on the front. If something much more serious was taken and done with these people, set an example, maybe it would be a lot less. Aside from that, he said people were being turned away at the recruitment centers. That's no longer the case, obviously. Ukraine is desperately looking for people. They are, I've actually seen it here. They will find people, if they're 25 and older, males, they will find them like out and about at the bars, at a restaurant, on the street. They will pull up on them and literally say, hey, you need to come with us. And within the hour, they will be at a barracks. Call your parents, you're going to the front. It's literally that serious now. So, moving on.
Yeah,
No doubt.
yeah. But how much faith, I guess, do you have in that corruption will get sorted out, I guess, sooner rather than later?
I think more as I said before, from the small companies or charities who donates vehicles or a couple of helmets to the larger companies. By the sound of it, it's more and more the ones the foreigners to deal with the transportation organization and so on. As simple companies maybe deliver a couple vehicles per week to the front. The guys driving the cars from point A to point B literally into the front and making the pictures and showing, guys, these vehicles definitely reached the front, did not stay in Kiev and some fat commander haven't stole them, hit them and sold them or whatever. Then I think, yeah, it will improve because the pressure will go higher and higher. There's more and more projects I hear when
I saw this happen multiple times, but these volunteer agencies or companies or groups would bring directly to us at the Legion, us troops that were going to deploy to the front line. They would bring us stuff, IFACs, AFACs, vehicles, mags, all kinds of stuff, food, water. That's definitely the route to go. But so many people, especially volunteer agencies, don't want to put their lives that much in risk by traveling that close to the conflict, which they shouldn't have to, frankly. That shouldn't be their job. Their job is to collect these supplies and send it over. They shouldn't have to worry about it getting stolen. And he made a comment about the fat commander, that's a part of the corruption. It's got to be the lowest form of human life form, in my opinion. These people go up there with child molesters and rapists, and in my opinion, to steal directly out of the mouths, if you will, of soldiers who are fighting for your country, pieces that you are the lowest form of human.
Huge companies want to implement their own logistics teams made of the foreigners who they know definitely will do the job.
Right.
Then hopefully that will start poking, let's say, when you start poking the fingers in a certain people, they probably will need to step up, like what happened with the SBU commander, the main chief. They needed to change because too many people from other countries find out about what's going on. Then hopefully it will happen as soon as possible, because now when the guys see loads of heavy equipment, then the country should have enough anti-armored vehicles equipment to smash them, but they don't have any. It's like, how come? Those guys are the top of the food chain. They should have anything they need, to be honest. Where it all disappeared.
Yes. Of course. Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? That level of corruption.
Yes, it is. It's like I said, very frustrating. Our own friends, as and so on, because pure level of corruption. It's like, guys, it's not even skill of the enemy, just literally pure corruption.
And the Russians you have come up against personally, and I guess with your teams, are they well-trained soldiers? Are they well-equipped? Or are they more like conscript soldiers with no idea?
It depends where. I think what I noticed, the more skilled guys, they don't get captured or killed as easily. But the ones, the conscripts you call, those probably we get around. But what I noticed personally, let's say the same Irpin and Bucha, they left loads of not only dead bodies and so on, but they left loads of marks of their heavily drinking And the interesting thing, they were banning those places. It's like they were opening their own clubs of drinking, and after they retreat, they ban everything and so on. It's like everywhere was, everything smashed and so on. There was, what kind of a professional soldier will come and break every door and smash everything, ban?
One of the reasons we're making this series, guys, if you did not watch the first episode, is because I received a comment saying on my video that I said why I left the International Legion, and somebody left a comment saying, you could just tell us that you bitched out. You don't have to make a 15-minute long video, which, again, is his prerogative, is his opinion, but it made me think maybe I wasn't as clear as I should have been in my why I left the International Legion video. So somebody like Willy, having this, who's a much more well-known YouTuber and has been doing this for a long time than me, having an interview with another International Legion soldier saying almost verbatim what I said in my video about why I left, maybe that'll give a little more context to what I said in my video, right? A little more context behind me leaving rather than just being a bitch, I guess.
and drink intensively. They drinking, like myself, I think I had my first welcome 2 shots of spirit, 2 shots, and that's it, in like 2 or 3 months time when I joined a new team, and that's it. And we were finding loads and loads of leftovers of alcohol, and that for me was a big thing, how professional you are if you consume such amount of alcohol. And then the people, the same ones, and we were fighting a lot, but Bucha we had the chance to speak with some more with locals, and they were saying, look, at the beginning they were stealing mattresses and beddings and so on, we understood, but when they start breaking into the shops, stealing alcohol and demanding for space sex, and if people refuse, then they would rape and so on, left and right. And it's like, how come highly skilled soldier could do such a thing? I know we do violence and so on, but we do violence to the enemy, not to the civilians. It's like, it's ridiculous. It's until now I'm quite shocked.
Another very clear point that he's making, and this has been fact checked over and over and over, and there's numerous claims of Russians doing this, basically just soulless bastards going into Ukrainian villages, raping, pillaging, like animals. This is just another way of telling that there is a very clear right and wrong in this conflict, right? There should be no confusion here. Like, I see some people confused with the Israeli-Palestine conflict. Okay, I still think that's pretty cut and dry as well, but if you're confused by that, it's a little bit more understandable than being confused about this conflict. Okay, Ukrainians would never, and I'm sure, I can guarantee there's been war crimes committed by the Ukrainians, but nothing to the amount, the sheer number of crimes committed by the Russians and how often. And to the extent of the war crimes, Ukrainians aren't raping people. Come on, man.
Shocked with the attitude, and they've been fighting like this from the old days. When you look at the history, they always been rapings and lootings and so on, and drinkings. Because like in my country, most of my father age people, they all served to the Red Army. It was not optional. It was, all you go serve or we're just gonna shoot you on a spot. And all these stories was about heavily drinking. Looks like since 50 years ago or so, they haven't changed. And that's how come they allow the commanders and so on so heavily drinking and looting and raping and so on. It's like, where's the professionals? That's not a professional's job. Can't imagine professional acting like this. It's like, just, maybe I don't understand something about the warfare, but I've been in more than a couple places, and even some very, very bad places where civilization barely exists. But even there, civilians was big no. Enemy is enemy, but if it's civilian, you're not going to do things what they were doing or drinking so much when you're operational. It's like, yeah, it really, really, really surprised me. Then, yeah, my personal experience, the poorly trained, well equipped in regards of heavy equipment like tanks and BTRs, BMPs, and so on. All the big toys, which is harder, to take down with what we have. Otherwise, they constantly were using artillery. It's really hard to get to them. They were constantly, anything moves, they will kill. It's a civilian, or it's my own eyes. I remember I passed 3 young men in Erpin, and other team which were closer were planning to approach those 3 young men, and it opened up. The artillery from the Russian side were hammering those kids. They smashed them into bits. I probably was like 150 meters watching, the artillery work, and they were just hammering that place, absolutely annihilating. Then why you would use so much artillery on the civilians? That's again, how professional is this? I haven't came across since day one till now, till where we say, wow, that was professional. The guys knew what they were doing. No, not from my personal experience. I truly believe they should have experienced soldiers, because they've been fighting in many places, because most countries which supporting them being occupied by them anyway. Then they should, but I haven't came across any professionals so far.
Does that make you think that maybe Russia just has not yet deployed their professional units, or are those units just not as trained as we might think?
They deployed, from when you speak to the guys who've been, like I said, in a fight from 2014 and so on. They said they actually deployed majority of the experienced fighting force at the beginning of the war.
Right.
And as you know, at the beginning of the war, they were taking just phenomenal amount of casualties. We were making some serious damage at the beginning, until it became more trench warfare after the Kiev got defended, all that side from Belarus got defended, and we start moving the other side, east and south. That's where the trench warfare start digging. That's where we start. It's became much harder, ridiculously harder to identify, actually, kill someone and so on. If you had effective fire and so on, it's so much harder to identify. But yeah, that's, I think, in the beginning they send their best boys. Most of them died, which of course they will have some smarter units who probably try to be refilled with the new manpower. But yeah, I know the only thing that the Air Force still have plenty of power.
Yes.
That's what we'd be advised to remember from US. Like I said, we had a serious visit, and the guy said, don't forget, they have still plenty of Air Force left in them. But why they not using it yet?
Yes. That's something that I have been pondering on massively as well, is the overwhelming power of the Russian Air Force. And that it seems like it's just not getting used. What's your thoughts on that?
At the beginning, they were using a lot of the Air Force, but they were taking like phenomenal, again, amount of the planes and stuff taken down. We hear that the pilots were like literally refusing to go in, and you have loads of videos in general of a large amount of Russian soldiers saying, "Nah, we didn't come here to do what they've been, how to say, tricked into coming in the certain places, fighting and so on, or given the jobs which are incapable to doing so, of themselves are saying so." There's plenty, because myself,
I hear this a lot, and I heard it a lot when I was in the Legion. That I guess there's kind of this this portrayal that we're going to be fighting basically these savages with very little military experience. Some of them don't even have weapons. They don't even know why they're there to fight. They don't even know that they are there to fight, which I'm sure may have been the case in some positions, some places, but I do want to be very clear that there are some well-trained Russian soldiers still in this conflict. Absolutely. Whether they're airborne units or Spetsnaz, Wagner's out of the picture, right? But Wagner was here.
if I speak,
Wagner was there when I was here in Ukraine, when I was deployed, and when this guy was deployed as well, because he's been there. He was there at the very beginning.
Russian, because I was born when I was born, my country was still under Russia suppression. It
Yes.
was still part of the SSR, and yeah, it stayed. There's plenty of videos of them saying we didn't want to go to fight here and so on and so on. We're fully refusing to go any further because we're not trained and we wasn't ready for that kind of a specialized fighting and so on. I think they probably can't do much as they would like to, because you can use your air force, but then you need someone to fill the ground as well.
Yeah.
It's like a half job. It's like a starting the engine. Yeah, engine is working, but there is no fuel to drive the car. And I think they probably paranoid that the whole NATO or something could trigger. The war could be triggered with the NATO. They could be keeping it for the.
I mean, this has definitely changed. That I would say the Russian Air Force is in full effect at this point, has been at least for the last year. I think it's a very good thing that Ukraine has finally received those shipments of F-16s, and they're receiving training on those. I think that'll make a big difference in this conflict, I hope.
For the bigger problems in case it would have happened. Yeah, then I think that's two reasons. One is they're incapable to fill up the areas which they, let's say, would bomb or so on. And the second one, they paranoid and they're waiting for bigger war.
Yes, because that's, I guess, a bit of what I've seen is I think that maybe that's more so that Russia is waiting for, like, keeping a lot of equipment back in case, NATO does come, because like the evidence of the really modern tanks and really modern planes, at least from my opinion, I just haven't seen it. And I'm surprised, because I sort of thought, well, hang on, there's not much that Ukraine would have in its back pocket to be able to shoot down like a Su-57 or something. I'm like, why are they not using this? Or is this because they are paranoid that if NATO comes in, that they will still need that equipment, can't lose it early?
Yeah.
Probably. You go, sorry. Yeah. No, yeah, you go.
I wanted something to say and I forgot, to be honest.
Sorry.
I just understood. Yeah, just realized what I wanted to say. Let's don't forget there is a different mentality. I think yourself, you have been deployed into the countries where cultures are very different.
Right.
Fighting and locals, from the small things to fighting, they're very different mentalities, And let's don't forget Russians in regards of stealing and corruptions. They probably one of the, how to say, they laundered loads of money, because I think when the Putin went into war, he been lied to that all those money which been invested into the mighty Red Army actually been loads of stolen and laundered and so on. If Ukraine can manage to steal so much equipment and so on, and laundering and stealing, all that shady stuff while they've been attacked, try imagine what's going on in Russia.
Yes.
They stealing and corruption, and how they laundry the money, like when they were retreating from Irpin and Bucha, we had some of the most there was one of the largest or most intense artillery artillery discharges in the whole war. And we were joking, we're saying Russians actually, they did it purposely just to write it off, the ammunition and so on, because not all ammunition which been actually been shot out and so on, because then they can steal, sell and so on. Don't forget, so many of the commanders need to cover the big projects, let's say. Then it could be that, yes, they have some parade equipment, but it's not as much as the Putin even himself thought, because the corruption is ridiculous in that country, literally beyond understanding.
Yeah.
Different culture, very.
That's a very good way to put it. It's the corruption is beyond understanding, and like it's hard to fathom, right? Even in Ukraine. But that's a good point that he made, that if it's happening in Ukraine, you know what's happening in Russia. The difference is, I think, is how far Russia will go in disciplining somebody who is found to be extremely corrupt, because we already know Putin's corrupt and these oligarchs, and we've known this for decades, but if they're stealing from Putin, I would imagine Putin would make a very serious example out of them to try to stop the corruption and stealing from him, when Zelensky and Ukraine probably can't go to as extremes of punishing these corrupt people. You know what I mean? So I don't know, but I'm sure there's just insane corruption in Russia as well, which we already know there is in the high levels, right? As high up as their president. But we're 30 minutes in. We'll make that a part 2. This looks like it's going to be probably a 4 or 5 part series. So this is good. I hope you guys are liking this. If you are enjoying this kind of interview, let me know in the comments below. Please like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you in part 3.